back in the day, I got to talk with Steve Ballmer a couple of times. Dude was a blast, an absolute blast. And by the way, a bit of a maniac. Smart guy, energetic guy. The first time I met him, it blew my mind. First time I met Steve Ballmer, I spilled salad on him. This was back in the startup days when we'd first gotten our big round of funding and people started to write about our company, the internet radio company. And I was at an event. You want to talk about imposter syndrome? I'm at this event and I'm looking around at major players in tech. Oh my gosh, that's Mitch Kapoor. Oh my gosh, that's Timothy Draper. Oh my gosh, that's Eric Schmidt. Oh my gosh, that's Steve Ballmer. Oh my gosh, and I can't remember the guys who founded Yahoo, but that's who they were. Oh gosh, that's Mark Cuban. And oh gosh, this is that famous venture capitalist. And oh gosh, that's Bill Gross from Idea Lab. And it was one of those days. And I was there with my friend, John Atchison, and John had become the director of my board of directors, dear friend, dear mentor of mine. Anything good I ever did in tech was John. It wasn't me. And I'm sitting there and watching this, and then it's time to eat. And I get up and I go and I'm getting food. And at that point, I didn't weigh, well, no, that's not true. I probably did weigh about 400 pounds. And I'm in line. And because I'm around people who are healthy, I decided I'm going to eat salad because that's what healthy people do, I thought. And I'm dishing up the salad. I forgot something. I turned around, bumped into a guy wearing a very expensive shirt and kind of light sweater. And I spilled on him. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I looked up. It's Ballmer. That's okay. I think I can afford another shirt. Punching me on the shoulder. It's good. We're fine, man. We're fine. That was Ballmer. I walk back to the table, and there's John looking at me, mouth agape. I'm like, yeah, I just spilled salad on Steve Ballmer. Second time I met Ballmer was at Microsoft. And another mentor of mine, a woman named Joanne, she and I were talking. It was, I think, my second year at the Soft, and man, I was getting the itch to be entrepreneurial, and things move so slow, and there's such process. And talking to Joanne, I think I should leave. I should go do it, And apparently, she got this into the ear of Ballmer, who'd never heard of me. She simply pulled this in as a favor. And so we were at this event. It's called a skip level event where there's bosses of bosses, and we get to go talk about what we're doing. And so we got to talk about the video platform, and Steve was there. And afterwards, he was asking me some questions, and Joanne came up. She said, Todd's thinking of leaving. And Steve, like, what are you doing? Now you're not leaving? Put his hands up. What are you doing? Leaving? Shaking me. He's that boisterous. He's that enthusiastic. I count him as a decent dude, in other words. So when I saw that he was doing Facts USA, it made sense. Steve Ballmer is going to use his business wit, and he is a business mind, his enthusiasm, and his desire to help. He does want to help people, to create an organization to bring facts to play economically. He talked to the guys at The Daily Show about this. Jon Stewart specifically interviewed him. I want you to see part of this, and then I want you to understand what Ballmer can't see because of who Steve is. I'm not claiming to be a buddy, but I spent enough time around him in meetings and in encounters like that to count him as a decent dude. It's fraud that he can't see. If you're watching this on Wednesday the 25th, tomorrow there's an event that could save you from being defrauded. It's a free live webinar from my friend Zach Abraham, the Chief Investment Officer at Bulwark Capital Management. He's going to talk about all the ways that current events are destroying retirement accounts or might. See, your retirement was built up over time. It started when there were still rules in society where the performance and loss statements of companies mattered. That doesn't matter anymore. It started before it became true that 90% of wealth right now is generated by simply waiting around for the Federal Reserve to do something. That's not good. It started before there was a drive to create not neo-feudalism, but actual feudalism, where 90% of us never own a thing. That's not good either. Those changes will affect your retirement, but you can get ahead of this. In my mind, that requires active management of portfolio, which can reduce risk and volatility. And Zach's obsession is risk management, using active management of every portfolio, again, because that can reduce risk and volatility. So this is a free live webinar. Zach's going to explain how world events can affect your retirement. It's free, but you have to register. Go to knowyourriskradio.com. That's KNOW. knowyourriskradio.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.
Steve Ballmer talking with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show.
Let me start with 86% of all federal. I can talk separate about state and local spending.
Yes.
But 86% of all federal spending is in a few simple areas.
Okay, let's go.
Number one, paying our debts. Got to pay the interest on our debt.
How much goes to the debt? I've seen breakdown of taxes. I've heard that the third largest or second largest portion of our tax money goes to pay down the interest on the debt.
It's creeping up there. It's like number 5 right now.
Okay.
We go Social Security's number 1.
Okay.
Medicare, number 2.
Okay. So 2 things that we pay into but don't get till we're older.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
What's number 3?
Number 3 is the military.
Okay.
Medicaid.
Is 4?
Medicaid is 4.
Okay.
Exactly. Sorry. The debt is 4.
Oh.
Medicaid is 5.
Okay.
Veterans benefits.
Okay.
Let me see if I forgot anything.
You know what, though?
So he's going through a list that Steve has certainly studied. In the meetings I had with Ballmer, he knew a lot. He was a detail guy. I remember a meeting in Santa Monica, California. And Steve had been brought into this after there was a very weird event that happened. We were at the Microsoft campus. And Gates and I know Bill was there, and I heard Steve was there. There was a big, I don't remember, company. Someone was coming in. Never learned who the people were, but I was on campus coming out of a building called Red West, which was a cafeteria, and Bill walked by. And he had a group of people with him, and he made eye contact. He said, "Good morning, Bill." I said, "Good morning." This is before he became a psychopath. And I think he's a psychopath now. I don't think it was then. And he walked into that building, and I had a guest in from New York, and he had served in the Army. And there was a massive explosion. Massive. And it shook the ground, and my friend actually pushed me up against a wall. And he pushed me up, and he turned around. I said, "Was that a bomb?" It sounds like a car bomb. And suddenly, up here in the air, and I'm not kidding, it seemed like 30 seconds, there were helicopters all over the place. And all of a sudden, there was security I'd never seen just surrounding the building. Wow, those guys have always been there. After this, Ballmer had this event in Santa Monica, and I got to sit in on this, and we got to ask questions. And someone asked Steve, "Hey, how are you protected?" This thing in Redmond really freaked us out. It turned out it was a grease cooking thing that exploded in the kitchen. Thank God no one was hurt. But they brought this up, and Ballmer says, "Well, I'm driven around by an armored car. When they bring me in here, this comes out of the back of bringing in an airplane." And then he goes on through, and this thing weighs 53,000 pounds. It's got 3 layers of and he went through all the tech specs. It's a 12 cylinder. You think they couldn't run? I think it's so fast, and it's just really well protected. And Ballmer's that way. He knew all the details. Like here, he has at least some talking points on this. He talked about what he thinks should be done, but he can't see it. Steve can't see it because of who I think he is.
It's a little bit of whack-a-mole, though.
Yes.
We can increase taxes. We can borrow more money.
Right.
Or we can live with the kind of spending profile we have today. Something gives in that equation. And me personally, I will confess, nonpartisan view for USA Facts. We just give you the data. You make up your own mind. I'm a businessman. Balancing the budget seems good to me. And so I look at it and it's simple. We probably need some more taxes, probably, and we probably need less spending, probably.
Wow. Steve, people are process. People, process, perception. It's the 3 legs on the table. People, process, perception. Your P&L is a result of people who are working a process. The perception, well, that's just marketing. Internal and external. You can't see this. Those aren't the only levers you have. You have people. And you have fraud. A former Border Patrol chief was testifying in Congress. His name is Aaron Heitke, U.S. Customs and Borders Protection, former chief patrol border agent or Border Patrol agent, testifying in Congress. Watch and listen.
In San Diego, we had an exponential increase in significant interest aliens. These are aliens with significant ties to terrorism. Prior to this administration, the San Diego sector averaged 10 to 15 SIA arrests per year. Once word was out the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more than that registered this year. These are only the ones we caught. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on this increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border. Fentanyl is another issue. The San Diego area sees between 80 and 90% of the methamphetamine and fentanyl seizures annually for our entire country. With little enforcement at the border, these drugs were coming through en masse. During my last year in San Diego, the price for a single pill of fentanyl, for example, went from $10 to 25 cents. To make matters worse, during 2022 and 23, I had to shut down San Diego traffic checkpoints, which are critical for drug interdiction, because the resources had been diverted to the process and release mission. The large numbers also had and still have a negative impact on the San Diego community. I had to release illegal aliens by the hundreds each day into communities who could not support them. To quiet the problem, 2 flights a week were provided from San Diego to Texas. These flights simply brought aliens that would have been released in San Diego over to Texas. Each flight cost approximately $150,000. This was the administration's way to try and quiet the border-wide crisis.
People are process and their policy. Angelo Mayorkas, the top of the DHS, is corrupt. He's either getting paid to ruin the country or he's playing the long game, where he's on the side that seizes power as they continue to destroy the Electoral College count. Forcing Border Patrol agents to bury terrorism data, spending $150,000 per flight to transport illegal aliens not out of the country, but to a state the Democrats are trying to flip electorally. Warm bodies equal census count. And refusing to apply any resources to track fentanyl. These are people-made decisions. Mayorkas, the corrupt head of the Department of Homeland Security, is committing treason. If Steve Ballmer had issued an order as CEO of Microsoft that we were going to have an across-the-board headcount or RIF, reduction in force, so you're going to have 10% of people sent packing, and instead one division took 10% of their people and sent them to another division, and that game was played across the company, he would probably fire any executive who refused to do this. Steve is a guy who acts. There's no firing in the federal government. Here's why. And this is ultimately the problem. And Steve has got to understand this. Base pay at Microsoft when I was there was very good, very competitive. It wasn't rock star, but it was very competitive. The stock bands, they were magic. You go through enough vesting cycles, and you can be looking straight into the eye of $1 million payday in stock, and then 10. I never got to that level. People I know did, and then some. But that comes by meeting commitments, not goals. Oh, there's goals, but then there's commitments, things you will do to achieve the goals. You meet your commitments, you usually reach your goals. That's how you get the stock bans. That's how you get real money. How you get fired is you have 3 performance reviews below, I think, a 2.5, and it's not even a question. You're gone. All of our incentive was to either save our department's money or to make our department's money. That was all of our incentive because that's what everything came back to. What was the profit and loss? It wasn't a department that got fired. It wasn't a department that got sued. It was us. Well, us that got fired. There are no incentives in the federal government to do anything the right way because no one ever really pays a price. People, Steve Ballmer, are process. And people are policy.